All right, here we go. First warm up of the week. You guys ready to go? All right, you're going to copy this down, and then you're going to come back, and I will zoom in a little bit so you can copy it down now. Let me get that top half, everything above this line first. I'll zoom in kind of big for you. There you go. Everybody should be able to see that. Okay, press pause. Copy down that top half. Okay, now copy down that bottom half. Okay, now press pause again and go try this. Okay, if you get totally stuck, ask a hint. Okay, and then we will go over the answers. It's okay not to have all the answers when we start going over it. It's not okay to not have all the answers when we're done, though, right? You should follow along. So copy all this down, do your best, ask for hints when you have time, and see if you can get a little boost if you need it and find the answer. And then we'll go over all the answers. There's something new here called reciprocals. And reciprocals are numbers that you multiply to get a product of one. And you think, well, how can I multiply two numbers to get one? Well, here's a perfect example. X over y times y over x. We don't even know what x and y are. But what do you get when you multiply x over y times y over x? Well, on top, you get x times y, xy. On bottom, you get yx, which is the same as xy, right? Same thing on top as on the bottom. That equals 1. Okay? 3 over 5 times 5 over 3. When you multiply those, you end up with 15 on top and 15 on the bottom. And what does that equal? That equals 1. Okay? So go ahead and try those, and we will come back and get all the answers. Okay? All right, let's go over these answers. First, these diamonds, 45 and 14. What two numbers have a product of 45 and a sum of 14? Hopefully you figured out that's 5 times 9, right? 5 times 9 is 45. 5 plus 9 is 14. How about 4.5 and 4.5? Can that even work? Did I stump you? Well, my goal is to stump you on some of these things. If you get every single one of these without getting a hint, then I did not make the warm-up tough enough for you, right? The goal is to stump you, and then when you're stumped, you can't get the answer, you find out the answer, and you say, I get that now. And then the next time you don't get stumped on that one. Hopefully I'll stump you on another one. How about 24 thousandths and 38 hundredths? Again, multiplying two numbers, getting 24 thousandths, and you're adding two numbers, getting 38 hundredths. Well, guess what? Here's a hint for you. 3 times 8 is 24. If I go with 3 tenths, that's a 3 in this spot, and 8 hundredths, that's an 8 in this spot. When I add those, I will get, right, 38 hundredths, right? And you add, you line up those decimals, fill in zeros if you want. The decimal comes straight down when you add. So I do get 38 hundredths. When I multiply, I go 3 times 8 is 24. And then in order to pretend that was a 3, I had to move the decimal over one spot to the right. In order to pretend that was an 8, I had to move this decimal over 2 spots. So total in my problem, I moved the decimals 3 spots to the right. So I go back 3 spots in my answer to place the decimal. And you're going to fill in the egg carton. So see how that works. How about 3/8 and 1 1/4? This actually ends up being 1/2 and 3/4. You can see when I multiply across the top, 1 times 3, I get 3, and 2 times 4, I get 8. When I add, 1/2 is the same as 2/4, and 2/4 plus 3/4 is 5/4, which is improper. 4 of those fours can make one whole, and I would have 1/4 left over. So that's when you add. Okay, hopefully I stumped you on a couple of those, right? And hopefully, if you see those in the future, you'll be able to say, I remember how that works. Okay. All right, reciprocals. Reciprocals are numbers that when you multiply them together, they equal 1. Another name for reciprocals, they're called multiplicative I kind of like saying that word. Multiplicative inverses. Multiplicative, whoops, it just ends with an E. Inverse. An inverse is kind of like flipped over, right? Okay, so 3 over 5, the multiplicative inverse of 3 over 5 is 5 over 3. It's that number like flipped over, right? 3 times 5 is 15, and 5 times 3 is 15. So 15 over 15 is 1. What's the multiplicative inverse or reciprocal of 3/7? That's going to be 7/3, right? Because 3 times 7 is 21, 7 times 3 is 21. 21 over 21 is 1 whole. How about the multiplicative inverse or reciprocal of 2/9? 9/2. Now, 9/2 is equal to 4 1/2. So sometimes they will ask you, what is the inverse of 4 1/2? And sometimes kids have a tendency to want to say that's 4 2 over 1, right? Now you got to take the whole thing. So whenever you have a mixed number, they're asking what the reciprocal or multiplicative inverse is of that. You need to go ahead and change it to an improper fraction so you can do the easy part and just flip it over. Okay. 5/4. What's the reciprocal of 5/4? 4/5. What's the reciprocal of 1 2/3? And this is what I was telling you about. Before I get that, I'm going to go ahead and use the C method to find out what 1 2/3 equals. All right, and that's when I go 3 times 1 plus 2. 1 2/3 is the same as 5/3. What's the reciprocal of that? 3/5. And this is harder to see. 1 2/3 times 3/5 is 1 whole. Okay, but you have that improper fraction, then it's easy. And again, what are you doing here? C method. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. 9/4. What's the reciprocal of 9/4? 4/9. Okay. Also want to resist the urge when you're getting reciprocals of saying they're asking for the reciprocal of a number. You're not going to say that equals. So the reciprocal of 3/7 is 7/3. Don't write 3/7 equals 7/3 when they're asking this. They're not equal. Okay. So say the reciprocal of that number is this. Okay. All right. How about the reciprocal of 17? What's that going to be? Well, it's easier than you think. 1 over 17. 17/17 is 1 whole. 17 times 1/17 is going to be 17/17. 1 whole. How about the reciprocal of A? Can you get that? Yeah. 1 over A. Right. Yeah. A on top, A on the bottom. All right. Because A is the same as A over 1. 17 is the same as 17 over 1. All right. All right, let's get these other ones. Now we're matching. We're matching some fractions, decimals, and percents. 3/4 is the same as what as a decimal? Now, I know this. If you didn't know this, what do you do? To change a fraction to a decimal, you divide the bottom into the top. Okay, now 4 won't fit into 3. Of course it won't. It's not improper. So you add a decimal, bring it up, and add a 0. 4 goes into 30 7 times, because 7 times 4 is 28. When I get that remainder, I'm going to add another 0, and 4 goes into 20 5 times. So 0.75 is what I'm going to match this with. Now, what percent is 0.75? 75%. Okay, 3/8. When I divide a bottom into the top of that, I get 0.375. What percent is 375 thousandths? 37.5%. Remember to go from a decimal to percent, you just move it over twice. So these two are easy, right? 80% is going to be what? 0.8. 70% will be what? 0.7. 87.5%, what's that going to be? 0.875. All right, now, what fraction of 4/5, what does that match up with a decimal? Well, 4/5 is the same as 8/10, is the same as 8/10. 7/8, what's that? 0.875 or 875 thousandths. And 7/10 is what? 7/10 is 7/10. And if you weren't looking, or if you had your eyes closed and I said 7/10 is 7/10, you're going to say, well, duh. 7/11 is 7/11 too, right? 4/19 is 4/19. Yeah. 7/10 can be written as a fraction or a decimal, and you say it the same way. All right, 1 2/3 times 9/10. Let's go ahead and make that an improper fraction first. Say 3 times 1 is 3 plus 2 is 5. So I'm going to say 5/3 times 9/10. And again, I can multiply across the top, across the bottom, but cross cancel makes this a little easier, right? 5 goes into the top one time, goes into 10 twice. 3 goes into 3 one time, goes into 9. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 2 is 2. This ends up being 3 halves, which is 1 and 1/2. And again, let's look at that one more time real quick. 5/3 times 9/10. If I multiply it across the top, I get 45. Across the bottom, I get 15. And 15 goes into 45, so this ends up being 3. Uh-oh. 3. Oh, 3 times 10 is 30. Okay, this is not going to come out. 3 times 10 is 30. 45, 30 is. 15 goes into 45 3 times, goes into 30 twice. Okay. 3 halves is the same as 1 and 1/2. Sorry for getting confused there. I'm actually confused because I'm here recording this on a Sunday, and I don't know if you can hear in the background. The alarm just went off. So someone did not set the alarm right. I'm going to have to go fix that in a minute if no one else does. Hoping they get it. Now, 3/7 divided by 2/5. What are we doing here? Dividing fractions. Smell my feet. Leave that first number, the what? The same. And instead of divide, I'm going to multiply it because multiplying fractions is what? Easy. And instead of writing 2/5, I'm going to flip that other number and go 5/2. All right, almost done. 3 times 5, easy. 7 times 2, easy. 15/14. I'm going to use 14 of those 14ths to make one whole, and I'll have one left over. Boom, you're done. All right. Hopefully you got all these. Have a great week, everybody.